A lofty plane of darkness. Carol had, after the tragedy, left Menzies to stay in her quarters at the cathedral. While her home was located on the Menzies grounds, she acquired the need and want to be nearer Maria in any form possible. It had been in that location that she finally conceived the opinion that her wallowing did her only harm, which further led her to conclude that perhaps her whole way of life had been doomed for some time. Paired with the impressions she frequently received from the inhuman utterings, which to her own opinion was more akin to urgings, she decided to make way for a transition of sorts. But at the moment, she solely focused on those close to her. Returning to Menzies, despite knowing about the expansion that was undergoing, she was still caught in astonishment at her former home district. With the numerous new buildings along the street, she thought of it as its own little town in the shadow of Yarnham. At its inception, there had simply been the academy grounds with dormitory buildings behind the hill of the Grand Cathedral. Of course, structures like her own abode had been added, creating the beginning of a street that grew more and more sophisticated. She also remarked on the fact that she had heard little of the expansion from within the Grand Cathedral, but much of the work Menzies conducted, that she knew of, was of little interest to the public awareness, rendering their reputation, as well as their location, somewhat obscure. She found her friend in one of the smaller lecture halls, wildly addressing the gathering as she simultaneously was drawing illustrations on the blackboard. Scholars occupied the front row, listening attentively. Luna caught her entering and gave a short wave while, without further interruption, continued her speech. From what she gathered, it was detailing another method of, to simply put it, making contact. Admittedly, she knew little and was only aware in the manner of a distant and slightly disinterested observer to their search. She needed not wait long before Luna concluded the session and begged of the attendants to leave. Carol made herself small in the doorway, as she preferred not to engage in discussion with any of them. Lastly came Luna, who gave her a quick hug.
Having regrets? Still want that farewell party, eh?
No, please. Everyone makes such a big debacle out of nothing. I still intend to assist wherever I can.
All right, I know. Still, it feels like the end of an era.
They walked together down the hallway, surrounded by the sounds of footsteps, damped conversations, and the occasional obscure sound of experiments being carried out.
Did you hear of that strange beast they encountered? Strange one. Covered in lightning, it seemed.
Oh, that's neat.
I know, although not surprising. There are so many strange things down there.
Carol suspected, or rather hoped, that Luna would begin to display a sliver of grief or remorse rather than her usual work enthusiasm. But Luna was like she had always been, and it made Carol mildly frustrated. Unthinkable how one could react so casually about another's demise.
Luna? Are you alright? What? Where did that come from?
Well, You know, don't you?
Not really. I'm a tad stressed. There's a lot coming up from Lauren as of this moment, and most of it falls to me to oversee.
Luna, I'm talking about Maria. In the blink of an eye, Luna's smile vanished. It was rather astonishing how quick it was. She stopped in her steps, then continued to guide her out on a balcony. From it they could see all of the men's grounds. The large courtyard with dormitories and lecture halls, and further beyond down the street with up-and-coming residential structures. The grand cathedral towered in the distance, up on its height. Luna stood quiet with her hands on the stone railing.
The expansion is going quite well, as you can see.
Yes, it is beautiful.
You won't move away, would you?
No, of course not. This is my home. Luna gave a blatant, ailing smile.
Good, good. I have pestered German into also moving here, but he would rather be near his workshop, and I...
She pointed to a house that looked to be in the process of being torn down among the constructions.
I wanted Maria to move there, away from that dreadful tower. Silly as I was, I kept it as a surprise. But it was never finished. Never managed to.
Luna. The sorrow seemed to ambush her. She threw her hands to her face, and shortly she had begun to weep uncontrollably. Carol wrapped her into an embrace, one arm around her waist, the other over her shoulder, and hand at the back of her head.
Luna. Oh, Luna. I can't. How would I ever say farewell?
She cried and cried, like she had never cried before. Carol needn't say much. She could only let it happen. It was a frantic and stumbling cry. She dug deep into her chest to hinder the tears, but Carol could still feel them.
We have taken it too far. Maria knew, and it killed her. And I understand, because there is no stopping it now. We, nor anyone else can.
Sure you can, dear. You must do what you need to. She looked up at her with red eyes.
I need answers. What else could justify her death?
Luna's grief infested her own being, and a tear found itself escaping her eyes, like so many others had for the same reason.
She is dead, Carol. By the gods. Dead. And here we are.
She dried her eyes with her hands and started to regain her bearings.
But don't you worry. We are indeed still here. And there is much to be done. I understand. But don't you think
Luna silenced her with a hand gesture. Her face was now as it always was, like it all never transpired.
Please. I know what you're doing. But I don't want to go around in mourning. There is too much to do, and too many that I could disappoint. But have you considered yourself in all of this? I have. The best that I can. I fear more for my Lawrence.
Luna's office door opened without any announcement, and Lawrence stepped inside. His manner of carrying himself while entering was as dispirited as it had been for some time now. She held out hope that one of these days she could see the transition back to normal, at least out of the current mannerism. The behavior would of course have been excused more easily were it not for his habits. In her eyes, he was a man that tried to fill his scarred mind by pouring holy blood in the cracks. He walked carelessly inside and looked over the room, not fully turning his attention to her, slightly hunched, with his head lurched forward. I like it.
Huh?
Your office. It has been a while.
Well, we see each other plenty as is. You have little need to visit here.
I suppose. But would you not have wanted me to see it all the same?
What's with you? This seems unhealthy.
She bluntly bypassed his fruitless conversation crafting. Don't bother yourself.
I will bother myself. You are taking this gallant self-sacrifice too far. You are not alone, and not the only one that should bear the burden.
I said don't bother yourself. I wish not to hear of this again. If this was why you wanted such a formal meeting, then I intended to leave.
It was not. But I am serious.
So, what did you want to discuss? He was not inclined to take a seat and continued to stand with a bad posture to the side of her desk. She stood up and closed the door which she had carelessly left ajar. She returned to position herself leaning against her desk with her arms crossed.
I wish to utilize the cord.
Ah. The cord. Why ever?
To beckon the great ones.
He leered peculiarly to himself, almost as if amused. Yes. The relic of a... Well, what have you discovered?
Simple. The prophecies. The prophecy, which was conceived in old Themaru. You do recall our last attempt?
She said, sounding a bit more contemptuous than she meant. He crossed his arms and straightened himself somewhat. Indeed, there was a contact, I understand. A source, a call, but who answered?
No one. I firmly believe that was the problem. And why would there be an answer? How many people are there every day that both you and I deny audience with in favor of others? Why?
He inhaled impatiently and raised his eyebrows at her.
Because some beckon our interest. Some are simply not important enough. It might seem callous, but imagine what attracts the attention of a god. A great one.
What?
Like the prophecy, a child.
But there is no child. Dear Luna, there's just a part left.
But there never was a child to begin with, according to the belief. And it is plain to see the god's fixation. The legends are obscured by the blood, but the blood must have a source. And as we know, no child was ever born.
Not a certainty.
But most plausible. No, the queen was a queen, because she beckoned the great ones with the promise of a child. That's the legend. A woman is visited and blessed with a child, and she becomes a queen.
She was now leaning over the table towards him from the opposite side. He looked down to the floor, arms still crossed.
The cord is after all the relic of an infant great one. Their kin. We have refined the procedure. All we need is to implement a medium, a reason.
He was silent long enough for her to sit down in her chair. Eventually, he let out a big sigh. I doubt it heavily, if I am to be frank. It is a curious case, I admit, but... an umbilical cord.
Don't you agree it makes sense? Theoretically, at least.
Perhaps you would want to lend more resources to our blood research. The nature of the beast is very fascinating. A thing I surmise is unbeknownst to you.
That may be, but you do not hear me bragging about my own methods.
Never did I mean such. But we are close to determining the very nature and origin of these beasts, while you pour resources and time to make contact with the Great Ones. As I see it, we don't need it.
Oh, I can't believe it, Lawrence. Are you that skeptical, or just too envious? This is not a bloody competition. If we can have a direct audience with them, that could change everything.
His impression seemed to be that of astonishment, and he grew uncertain. Sorry. You are of course right. It has just been so much lately. New things every hour. But it is true. While our work will not achieve contact, I have a hard time to see much else.
Oh, Lawrence. Can't you see the fault in that? The blood. To take it for yourself. Can it not be the cause?
It is needed. It is not a normal formula after all. It is only meant to enhance the mind, stimulate it.
Not to numb it.
He bit his lip and inhaled sharply. Please, Luna, I must endure with my work. For it is not only important for me, but for so many. I must persist.
I know, but now I need you to listen at least.
He nodded, with pieces of shame still lingering.
With the right methods, aided by sages, the cries seem to stir a transcendental response. The key is somehow connected with infancy.
Lawrence stood very still with a hand to his chin, finally appearing to at least consider her words.
Experiments with phantasms indicate that sounds, specific sounds, cause them to display a reverberation pattern, like to the chime of a bell. This is important and groundbreaking, as you know. Previous experiments show sounds can be transcendental in nature, but for most of such sounds to fully be communicated, a medium is required.
The chord.
Yes, the chord of an infant great one.
I still am of the opinion it lacks certain merit.
I know, but we must be certain, no?
He stood silent, his face contorted more and more into a disgusted grimace. I would advise against it. He finally spoke sharply.
But Lawrence, why?
Why do you think? He suddenly snapped. It was hard enough to bring it and keep it for all these years. But I would not leave it with him. It was our sins that achieved it, not his. And see what it wrought. What do you think it was that had a hand in Maria's death? His eyes were wild, and his face was almost red in anger and desperation. But he was never particularly good at hiding himself from her, and she saw plainly the sorrow he masked. No good response came to her. This search after them is filled with atrocities. Everyone thinks I'm blind to them, but I am well aware. And the atrocities that we committed in the violated hamlet was the most horrible. The blood is not entirely pure, but a whole lot more merciful than that other path. She gave him some time until he felt calmer.
So you would have it been for nothing, then? Is that what you prefer? Yes, I remember. But doing nothing now will not change it. The price has been paid, and with one more step, we can get our reward. Please, Lawrence.
He seemed to lose his balance momentarily, only visible in a slight shifting of his posture. He looked around as if bewildered, then looked out through the window. She stood and walked closer to him, so she could take his hand comfortingly.
This is all about her, isn't it?
You are right, Luna. It is my fear. My greatest fear. To have it been for naught. His voice quivered slightly. I wonder, in light of what has happened, if we might have been more similar than I thought. I'm afraid that one day, perhaps sometime soon, it will become too much. The great ones, the blood, the insight that I have, and that which is yet to come. She gently wrapped her arms around him and brought his head to her chest, where she held him close.
Oh, Lawrence.
I feel like someone else. Over the years, the things I've seen, what I've discovered. At this moment, how much will I change? And would I know when I had become mad?
Lawrence, you won't be. You cannot remain static, beholden to one belief. The world will tell you many things, things you must adapt to, my darling. You might feel mad, but you have only gotten stronger, wiser, and most of all, exalted.
He nodded in her arms. His hands slowly began to hold her around the waist.
Very good. Frenzied cold blood. A rich droplet of cold blood containing blood echoes. This manifestation of madness comes from a mind teetering on the very brink. But has a sane mind ever produced anything of true significance?